Buddy, this is Bob Lazzari along with Tony D'Angelo here in Eastern Connecticut. Thanks for joining us on this Monday night.
Good evening, buddy.
My pleasure. Hi, guys.
Hi, buddy. Again, it's been a pleasure keeping in touch, and it's an honor and privilege to have you on the show.
Certainly.
Let's give our viewers a little background on Buddy Tony. You remember him very well.
Remember him very well.
Buddy was drafted by the Royals in the first round of the 1978 draft. From California, Tony. Played 6 years in the big leagues, 5 of them in Kansas City, 1 in Houston. Played in over 300 games, had over 550 Major League at-bats, 37 postseason at-bats. Actually hit .278 during the '85 World Series, has a World Series ring, and played with some great players, and we'll get to a little bit of that. And again, currently, he has co-authored a book called Tony, the 7 Secrets of World-Class Athletes with Steve Yellen. He is also one of the co-founders of PM Sports with Steve Yellen, and we'll talk more about that as we get down the road. The website for that, folks, you can get to is www.zonetraining.net, and we'll talk to that toward the end of our segment here. But first of all, Buddy, I usually ask the players that come on the show, even journalists that come on the show, growing up in California like you did, maybe name for our audience some of your favorite players, your favorite sports teams while you grew up.
Well, I grew up just north of San Francisco in a town called Marin County, county called Marin County, I should say, right across the Golden Gate Bridge. So I was somewhat of a Giants fan, although we had a good friend who pitched for the Dodgers, so I was a little bit torn between the Dodgers and Giants, and boy, did they have some great rivalries then, still do.
Sure.
But I grew up watching Willie Mays and Willie McCovey, and having a chance to watch Willie Mays on a regular basis was really, really something. He could just do so many things on the baseball field. He had just tremendous instincts, and was a joy to watch. And Willie McCovey, number 44, just hit some very long home runs to right field in Candlestick Park. So, although I'll tell you what, being at Candlestick Park wasn't a real pleasure. It was a pleasure watching those guys play, but being at the stadium, there was nothing pleasurable about it. I got to tell you, it was really, really freezing. In fact, I compare it to playing in the big leagues in the American League most of my career, playing in Cleveland in April when that wind and cold is whipping off Lake Erie there. It wasn't any different than growing up watching games at Candlestick Park.
It's very ironic, Buddy, because I follow the Giants very closely. I was born in the same year as Buddy, Tony, and I follow the Giants closely because my father, Buddy, his favorite pitcher when I was a kid, I'd ask him, Dad, who are your favorite players? And, of course, Marichal was his favorite pitcher, and he actually took me to see him a couple years later. So I followed the Giants very closely. So you and I saw a lot of the same stuff. I know growing up, the old Candlestick, the winds and the crowds of 2,500 people and things like that. So, yeah, that is great memories. But here you are in California, Buddy, and you get drafted by the Royals in '78. I just want to get your feelings. As soon as you found out you were drafted by a team in the Midwest, what was going through your mind?
Well, thank God for George Brett. Otherwise, I don't think I'd ever heard of Kansas City. George Brett really put Kansas City on the map. And, and I never expected to be a first-round pick. Thought I was going to be a second- or third-round pick by Pittsburgh or Cincinnati is what I had heard. And I got a call from the Royals, I think it might have been June 2nd or June 4th, 1978, in the morning saying that they were going to make me their first pick when they went in the draft, and would I be interested in signing? I said, if all things were right, I would. So really, I didn't know anything about Kansas City, and I'm serious that if it weren't for George Brett, I'm not sure I would have ever had heard of it. And but it was a great organization in those days. They're getting better now, but in those days, it was just a tremendous organization that was built around pitching and defense and speed. And thank God it wasn't built around hitting, because I know I would have been a first-round pick by the Royals.
Well, we
had some fun times there. We had some great years in Kansas City.
Yeah, and Tony and I talked about. We had a guest on the show last year, I guess. Tony, remember Jeff Logan? He was from the Kansas City Baseball Historical Society, and he talked about how great of a baseball town it really is, going back to the KCAs. And we remember the Kaufman days, Tony, and Royal Stadium back then, buddy. I know, and I think we mentioned this to Jeff. Artificial turf. How hot it can get in the summer there. I know you remember those days. It can get brutally bad out there in the summer.
I remember those days so well because I almost passed out numerous times.
There you go.
It was I remember one time getting left on base, and after a long inning, I was left at second base, and boy, I went back to shortstop, and I didn't think I was going to make it through the inning. But what we would do on those Sunday afternoon games, and I always had those Sunday afternoon games because the veterans wanted that day game after a night game off.
Right.
So I was always out there at shortstop, and that turf would get 40 degrees warmer than the outside air temperature. And if any of your listeners have ever been to, or viewers have ever been to Kansas City in July and August, it can be 95 to 100, and then you add another 40 on top of that, and that's a combination for burning feet. Yeah. So we actually would have ice buckets, not the water, but just buckets of ice in the dugout, and we'd actually stand in the buckets between innings just to cool our feet a little bit.
Isn't that something? And Tony and I would talk about. Yeah, we talked about that, buddy, as far as Cincinnati, too. When they had the turf at Riverfront, you'd see on the game of the week, you're behind Johnny Bench.
Steam.
You see the steam coming off. It was brutal. It really was.
I think, those are the days that, with a lot of the turf fields, that it was, that was the time you wanted to be a catcher because you were actually on the dirt,
Yeah.
And everyone else was, except for the pitcher, of course, was on the turf.
Boy. And then, you talk about giving people hot feet as a gag, but that was literally...
That was a real hot foot.
Again, folks, we're on the phone with former Major League infielder Buddy Biancalana. Tony D'Angelo, question for Buddy.
And Buddy, good evening. It's such a pleasure to have you. I first thought of, when I think of the Royals, watching the 1976 American League playoffs, and the Royals losing that very tough game, and Freddie Patek in the dugout bawling because he wanted to win so badly. And, like when I think of you guys, I think of the defense, I think of Frank White, I think of yourself in the series, I think of George Brett. And it seemed that you had this really good organizational concept. I mean, did they beat this into you from the minor leagues, like this is the Royals and this is how we play baseball?
Well, yes, and we were blessed, coming up as a young player to have George Brett and Hal McRae. And, I'm not sure there were two guys who played the game any harder than those two guys. Nope. And, as a young player, you come up and you watch them play and you realize, okay, this is how you play the game. You bust it every time down the line, and every time you're sliding into second base, you better break up that double play and go hard. And so that's kind of how the Royals were built. And we played hard, aggressive baseball, and our scouts did a tremendous job at drafting young arms. And, in '85 when we won the World Series, we had some tremendous young pitching in Danny Jackson and Brett Saberhagen and Mark Gubazah, and a couple of veterans in Buddy Black and Charlie Leibrandt. So pitching, defense, and speed and aggressive play, that was the signature of the Kansas City Royals in those days.
It really was fun to watch. We'll go down some of the names
for sure
in a bit, Tony, because Amos Otis.
I loved watching them.
They were so fun to watch.
I loved watching them
because they played so hard.
Yes,
Buddy hit it right on the head. When he said McRae and Brett, I don't know if I've seen players hustle like they did all the time. They were just. That's the way. Yeah. Never had clean uniforms either.
No,
but
serious.
That was the way they played. But let's fast forward, Buddy. Here we are, the '85 World Series, Tony. Now, Buddy appears in just half of the team's games that year, and then he ends up being a tremendous contributor in October during the Fall Classic. You end up winning a championship ring. You contribute greatly. You hit .278, Buddy. That must have been, obviously, the highlight of your baseball life. You must just savor that championship ring. And it elevated him
to national celebrity.
Yeah.
Well, it was definitely the highlight of my life and career. And, I just had a really wonderful experience in that series where my full ability just came to the surface really for the first time in my professional career. And it's basically what our business has been built upon, that those processes, the mind that were taking place, that allowed me to play so well. We've been able to quantify those processes in the brain and teach them. So, in that series, everything just slowed down for me, and I felt like I had a lot more time at the plate. I wasn't rushing, and for the most part, my intellect shut down. I really wasn't thinking much, and my swing was more fluid. I wasn't chasing balls in the dirt, and I ended up hitting, I think, 78 points higher than my career average. I played airless at shortstop, almost won the MVP of the series, and then 18 months later, I was out of the major leagues because I just didn't know how to repeat it. But as I stated, our business PM Sports Zone training, we've been able to quantify those processes of the brain along with neuroscientists that are taking place when an athlete is in the zone, when they're playing their best, and we're able to teach it. So, everything happens for a reason. I realize now that had I gone on to have a great major league career, I wouldn't have been seeking what it was, what it is that my partner and I have figured out.
That's a great point. And as far as your memories, how good was Saberhagen in that Game 7, the 11-0 complete game shutout, buddy? He was unhittable almost.
Well, Saberhagen was as good in Game 7 as he was all year. He won the Cy Young Award, and he was. I was telling someone I think yesterday, playing behind him that whole season was just a great experience because he located all his pitches so well. So as an infielder, I mean, you could just really count on him, hitting that location, and just gave you an edge out there playing defense, kind of having an idea where the ball was going to be hit before it was hit. And but certainly in Game 7, we won the game 11-0, and he was stellar as usual, and went on to win the MVP of the series and the Cy Young that season. So he was a tremendous pitcher. Just wish he could have played a little bit longer.
Tony, question.
And buddy, I often think about you'd played under Dick Hauser, and I imagine, or I remember, I believe Rocky Colavito was one of your coaches. What was it like with the manager and the coaches?
Well, Dick Hauser was really tremendous. Dick was, never got too close to the players, but was approachable, and he just kept a real even keel, which you hear that term a lot.
Right.
But he really did it, and he managed the game so well, and especially in that series, it was the first time that he had ever managed without the DH, being with the Yankees and then the Royals. Yeah, right. We had the DH, but the pitchers had to hit in that series, and it was his first experience with that, which isn't necessarily easy to do, and he did it flawlessly, and he had some tough calls to make as to whether to let the pitchers hit in certain situations, and seemed to always do the right thing. So, but he was great, and we had a coaching staff is great. Those guys work hard, and we had a wonderful staff, and just great instructors all the way through the minor league system with the Royals.
Again, on the phone with former major leaguer Buddy Biancalana. And Buddy, we mentioned again, I'm going to revisit a little bit. You played with some incredible players throughout your 6 years. Hall of Famers, Tony, like Gaylord Perry, Nolan Ryan in Houston. But I'd be remiss if I didn't go back to Brett now. Tony knows he was my favorite player of all time, probably just because of my age, Buddy. And again, another Hall of Famer, and I've written at length about him. To me, Tony, he made the game look easy with that whole Charlie Lau swing, but he played so hard, which was such a dichotomy of things, my question to you, buddy, and if you ever talk to him, please send an invitation. We'd love to speak with him sometime. I've never had that opportunity.
But, really.
I almost met him down in Norwich at a Hall of Fame thing, but he seemed to me, again, we knew he played hard, but was he a vocal guy in the clubhouse, or did he more or less lead by example, buddy?
Yeah, he really led by example. Hal McRae was more the vocal leader, and if George, just really led. Watching him play and seeing the way he played the game, you said, okay, this is the way you play the game. And not that you couldn't approach him in the clubhouse, but he was never a guy that would approach a player, and give his 2 cents. Although he was great with young players, took them, under his wing. The guys who needed a place to live, he was always, helping the young guys out. So he was great with the young players. But as far as a leader, he was really a leader on the field. Hal McRae, on the other hand, was the guy in the clubhouse that players would often go to, and that he would go to players, and he was a tremendous teammate as well. But both those guys were wonderful, wonderful teammates, and to this day, when I coach players, in fact, I was just coaching my son's little league team, 8-year-old team just now. That's where I just came from. And, I got that aggressive streak is still in me.
That's pretty good. And of course, you ended your career in Houston, and I know Tony wanted to ask you this also. Your memories of the Astrodome. We have pictures. We'll show later on. We're actually going to take a look back.
We have to illuminate them a great deal. It's so dark in there, buddy.
The 87. We're going to take a look at the 87 Astros later on in the show. But just your memories of playing in that place.
Well, I remember walking down the runway to the dugout and seeing a rat underneath the stands one time. That was the tail end of years as an astronaut. Oh, maybe not the tail end, but it was it was nothing special. I really enjoyed playing down there. I love the guys. We just had wonderful, wonderful guys. Led by Nolan Ryan and Denny Walling and Craig Reynolds and Terry Poole, just Alan Ashby, just a tremendous group of human beings, and that was great. I loved it. I just didn't play very well. That's why I was down there for such a short time. But the Astrodome, the roof was a little tough, and it was, for whatever reason, it was more of an adjustment for me. Not that it was ever easy for me to hit anywhere, but it was a little more difficult for me to hit in the Astrodome for whatever reason. I guess in the NCAA tournaments, they always talk about how it's tougher to shoot in those domes. Well, it was tougher to hit in the dome for me, and I never really adjusted. Yeah. So, but it was, I enjoyed my time there and met some wonderful people. Yogi Berra was a coach, and Nolan Ryan was just, one of the finest human beings I've ever met, and certainly have to be classified as the finest superstar I ever played with.
Sure.
And boy, the work ethic, it's no accident that he pitched for as long as he did. I remember one time he threw a shutout at home in the Astrodome, and we had this ramp that guys would run. It was literally a ramp in the clubhouse that might have been, 25 yards long, and after the game, after throwing a complete game shutout, he was running sprints on the ramp, and so he was a go-getter, and just pleased that I was able to play with him.
Yeah, and he that year, Tony, that Buddy played with him, Ryan 8-16 with an ERA of 2.7.
Yeah,
it's pretty amazing. How
how do you do that, right?
At age 40, but let's let's go right into our next topic, Tony. He just told us a kind of a secret to his career, and
right.
Buddy, with this new book, you got to tell us the impetus and what gave you the idea to write this book, Buddy, The 7 Secrets of World-Class Athletes. Again, this is with Steve Yellen. Tell us about that.
Well, again, I had this zone experience in the World Series, and 18 months later I was out of the major leagues because I really didn't know what was taking place that allowed me to play so well, and I could never reach that status again, and thus I was out of baseball in a very short time after the series. But I always knew that playing at that level and those processes that I experienced that allowed for time to slow down and my thinking to just basically be eliminated, and my swing to be more fluid and be more productive, I always knew those processes had to be repeatable. They had to be teachable. And so my life's journey has been, guys, to figure out how to teach that. And my partner, Stephen Yellen, had the same journey. He was an amateur men's singles champion in tennis down in Florida the same year Chris Everett was. And he, too, had a zone experience, had a win over John McEnroe in college. And both of us were seeking how to teach this. And Stephen's the one who's really figured it out. And we met through a mutual friend, and he taught me what he had figured out. I said, "You've absolutely nailed it." And I said, "This is going to have a dramatic impact on sports all over the world, all sports." And we formed our company about 6 years ago. We've now worked with athletes in 7 professional and 13 amateur sports. And since we formed our company, we hooked up with a neuroscientist, Dr. Fred Travis, who has quantified those processes in the brain that Stephen and I were experiencing when we played our best and when any athlete is experiencing when they're playing their best. And we have developed a systematic way to teach it through drills and concepts that are taught on the field. It's not sports psychology. It has nothing to do with sports psychology, but rather accessing the origin of motion, setting these certain processes of the brain that cause time to slow down and cause the intellect to shut down and cause the fast twitch, the more subtle muscles. The fast twitch muscles are the ones that are real active when an athlete is experiencing perfect timing. They're releasing their hands right on time, whether they're a golfer or a baseball player or a basketball player. It doesn't matter the sport. And so those are the fast twitch muscles that are enlivened when these processes happen, and they're the ones that they start to dominate the motion versus when the processes of the brain are off, when the prefrontal cortex of the brain is intercepting these signals that move to the motor system. And the bigger muscles start to play a more dominant role. That's when, the shoulder's pulling off and the hips are flying open, et cetera, et cetera. We've all seen it. whether it's a pitcher or a hitter. So we've had tremendous success in many sports. In fact, Philip Umber, who just pitched the perfect game for the White Sox over the weekend, went through our program 2 years ago,
cool. Wow.
right prior to the 2010 season, and really made a dramatic turnaround in his career. And so we've got a lot of exciting things taking place. We've just signed an agreement with a very well-known, I can't name the name yet, sporting goods company that we're going to produce a baseball DVD with, and they want us to market it to their social media sites. Great. We just filmed a commercial for the Golf Channel that will start airing in May, promoting our Quiet Mind Golf DVD. So a lot of very, very exciting things. We've got a lot of major league clubs that are interested in our program. No one's pulled the trigger yet, but we expect that to change very soon. So a lot of wonderful things. Very exciting time for us.
It sure is, and I know I could hear it in your voice, and it make a lot of sense, Tony. We've talked, you and I, about the mind-body connection a lot. How little separates these guys as far as their physical talent.
Well, I mean, they're all great players to get there.
Exactly.
It's just, yeah.
But Buddy does a lot at the younger levels.
Yes.
And he goes beyond the playing field. I've heard parents watching videos that Buddy sent me as far as how better they're doing in school and et cetera. It's something that triggers them to kind of change things, how they look at things. And again, we'll hear more about it. Question, Tony.
You know, and Buddy, I'm curious as far as other applications for the zone, like, I've played sports and I don't do it anymore, but now I work at a profession or an occupation. And there's days when I'm thinking, man, there's nobody that can get me out. And then there's days I'm thinking, little orphan Annie could get me out. Is there some application to what you're doing to people in ordinary occupations?
Well, it carries over. I do work with some business people, and I teach a lot of different mind-body techniques and exercises that really enhance the mind-body connection, and basically just allows someone to think from a more quiet level of the mind. And I think many people, if not all people, have had the experience where you're dozing off to sleep at night, or you wake up early in the morning, and all of a sudden some idea pops into your mind, some great solution or some idea, and you weren't even looking for it, but all of a sudden there it is. And the question is, why does that happen at that time of night or at that time of morning? Well, that's when the mind is settling down and starting to access quieter states. And just automatically what happens is, boom, here comes the idea. Well, believe it or not, the same thing is true with motion, that when an athlete accesses these quieter states of mind, that the best motion, the one they've practiced over and over again, that's in muscle memory, they're able to access that muscle memory just naturally. They don't have to go looking for it. It's just there. It's already there. And so the same thing is true for anybody, that once you start to learn how to access these quieter states of mind, that your performance will increase, whether you're a businessman or a baseball player or a tennis player, doing anything in life. And that's why our clients, our student athletes, do better in school, and we've even had a couple kids that say it helps their ADD, and they're doing better on tests, and so they're off the field applications, and it's a very, very simple process, and we know it's going to have a huge impact on sports and also reducing injuries as well.
And again, folks, the website is www.zonetraining.net. On that website, Tony, it says, what does PM Sports really teach? It says sports is all about motion. Motion is all about the muscles, and we've uncovered the mechanics of the operating system of the muscles. So it'll be a great thing. People out there, go to that website, zonetraining.net. You'll see some great stuff and other links and et cetera. And Buddy, our time is just about out, and we've been honored to have you join us tonight and give us some great memories. I hope we can talk again, and it's been a pleasure, and we wish you continued luck with all your endeavors, and please keep in touch.
Thank you, Buddy.
Will do. Very nice of you guys to have me on. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Our pleasure, sir.
Our pleasure. Take care, buddy.
All right. Bye-bye.